Actually, once again through Cat Collins, my good friend, who I had met Cat when we did a radio remote in Columbus, Georgia in 1985 on the roof of a furniture store. And Cat was on the radio. He was a DJ in Columbus, and the furniture store was a sponsor, and that we were plugging the wrestling matches, and we did a remote from the roof, and I met this guy, and he liked wrestling. He had been involved wherever he had been in radio with wrestling. He had been roommates with Nikita Koloff in Charlotte, and he had done some stuff with the guys in Continental in Alabama. And we hit it off and became friends. And a few years later, it was in 1989, Rick Rubin had asked him to be part of his record company and work with him as a promotions man. And Rubin was a great wrestling fan, and Cat called me one day and said, Rick Rubin wants to meet you. And of course I said, who the fuck's Rick Rubin? and he said, well, he's a record producer who has basically, of course I wasn't a follower of rap at the time, but he's a record producer from New York. He was in on the ground floor. He started a business out of his dorm room at NYU and produced, the Beastie Boys and Run DMC with his partner Russell Simmons. And his first royalty check from CBS Records was like $500,000, and that was when his parents said, "Well, okay, maybe you don't have to be a lawyer. Maybe you can, be a record guy." And Rubin was a great wrestling fan, and he came to Atlanta on record business and came to the Omni, and he wanted to meet two people, me and Ric Flair. And in this case, even though Nate was the bigger star, I was the smarter guy, because I told Rick Rubin, hey, if you really like old-fashioned wrestling like you say you do, then I've got an idea. And when I get out of this nut house that was WCW, I'd like to talk to you about it. And that's the start of it. We began talking on the phone. He wanted to finance an old-fashioned wrestling company, and I was the guy that wanted to give it to him. And we established a great relationship, and he became the guy that got Smoky Mountain Wrestling off the ground and financed it, and was thrilled about it. And truthfully, the only thing that brought a downfall to Smoky Mountain Wrestling was two things. Number one was 1995 was the worst year in history for pro wrestling, to the point where even Vince McMahon lost $6 million. It's the only year in modern history that the WWF did not make a profit. And secondly, Rubin, his business exploded to where he was working with Johnny Cash and Mick Jagger, and he just didn't have time to enjoy his wrestling company, and it got harder and harder to get him to devote time to watching. And so that led to our downfall, as well as the wrestling recession. But it was an amazing relationship, and he's an eccentric genius, and what a brilliant guy.